The world's leading group of genocide scholars has declared Israel is committing both genocide and crimes against humanity in Gaza. Israel has long maintained its actions in Gaza are self-defence and genocide allegations are politically motivated. Melanie O'Brien is an international law professor from the University of Western Australia and is chair of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. I spoke to Dr. O'Brien a little earlier and began by asking her who the group consists of.
The International Association of Genocide Scholars is the largest scholarly association for people who are experts in the field of genocide studies. We have about 500 members worldwide from countries all over the globe. We mainly consist of people who are academics, so scholarly experts, but our membership is also made up of people who come from different communities within the field of genocide prevention, education and punishment. So we have members, for example, who are government like public servants, members of the government in the field. We also have members from survivor communities, and we also have members who work for non-governmental organisations in the field of atrocity prevention. So we do represent a very broad range of people in different areas of practice when it comes to genocide prevention, education and punishment.
And what is the legal definition of genocide? Because there is a specific threshold that needs to be crossed for genocide to be established that's separate to war crimes or other atrocities.
Yes, so there are three what we call international crimes: war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. And each of them have what the legal terminology is chapeau elements, which is the French word for hat. And it means in addition to the individual crime, there is an overall element that has to be proven, and that separates each of those crimes. And for genocide, we find that definition in the 1948 Genocide Convention and also in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. And in Australia, we have implemented that into our Commonwealth Criminal Code Act. The definition of genocide is a list of 5 crimes committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial or religious group. The crimes are killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, inflicting conditions of life designed to bring about physical destruction of the group, transferring children from the group to another group, and also inflicting conditions that potentially cause prevention of births.
And what led you to the conclusion that Israel is committing genocide?
So I will say, to separate my personal opinion, I do believe that as well. But in this case, we're talking about the resolution that was passed by the International Association of Genocide Scholars and voted on, passing the vote with almost 90% of people who voted agreeing that it was genocide. From a personal standpoint, I can say that it's certainly a process looking at a process to come to the conclusion that genocide was formed. We are witnessing 4 of the 5 crimes being committed on the ground, and we are seeing those committed with that intent to destroy a particular group, in this case, the Palestinian group.
So you say that 90% of the people who took part agreed that Israel or thought that Israel was conducting genocide in Gaza, but it was a minority of scholars in your organisation who took part in the vote itself. Only 28% expressed their views. So why so few participants, and why did the majority, decide not to take part? Did they hold an opposing view?
So the quorum for a vote is 20% plus 1, which we passed. And I would say that this falls in the standard range of voting. And in fact, it's at the higher end of the range. With 500 members, that's a lot. And essentially, people are members of scholarly associations of all different kinds and all different disciplines. And not everyone is active in that sense. So it is quite standard, and our quorum of 20% plus 1 is fairly standard across other types of associations for this kind of voting, because we understand that when you have hundreds of members, not everyone is going to vote.
So what sources then, Melanie, did you use to declare that genocide was taking place, given the very limited access to information out of Gaza by the international media and by academics like yourself?
So the drafters of the resolution, which went through a rigorous peer review process through actually 3 different committees, included many links to a wide range of evidence, reports from NGOs, reports from the UN, media reports. So a wide range of what are considered to be reliable reporting of what is going on the ground in Gaza, to the best of our ability, obviously knowing that, that Israel has prevented Western journalists and also prevented many NGOs and the UN from being on the ground. But of course, we know there are still NGOs reporting from what's on the ground, such as Médecins Sans Frontières, those who can actually still access the territory of Gaza.
Part of the definition of genocide, as you mentioned, was to prove that there was an intention behind actions. How do you prove intent in this situation?
So this is a great question, because it's the hardest thing to prove when you go into court if you're prosecuting someone for genocide. And there are 2 main ways that we would look at that. So the first one is thinking about expressed statements by leadership of the perpetrator regime. So usually that would be civilian and military leadership. And there has been a track record essentially since the 8th of October 2023 and ongoing until today of statements made by Israeli civilian and military leadership that indicate an intent to destroy Palestinians, talking about how there are no innocent Palestinians, how they intend to starve them, how they intend to destroy Palestine and Palestinians. The second way to prove intent is to look at a pattern of conduct. So when we look at the pattern of conduct that's going on the ground, we see killings through, for example, bombings and shootings. We see well over 150,000 people have been injured on the ground. We see the imposition of conditions designed to bring about physical destruction. So the denial of food, water, healthcare, medicines, all of this resulting in malnutrition, starvation, and the spread of communicable diseases. And we also see other offences such as arbitrary detention, torture, reproductive violence, and many other forms of violence that, when you put it all together, indicates a pattern of intent to destroy the group in whole or in part.
The Israeli Foreign Ministry, Melanie, says the report is based on poor research. It's regularly denied that its actions in Gaza amount to genocide and says that they are justified as a means of self-defence. What's your response to that?
Self-defence is permitted in international law. However, there is no justification for committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide. And in the current case that we're talking about, you could have been talking about self-defence on the 8th or 9th of October 2023, but at this point, that's not what we're seeing on the ground. Self-defence still needs to be carried out within the laws of war, and that includes the requirement that actions must be proportionate and they must be carried out according to military necessity. Israel's actions are no longer proportionate. They are extraordinarily disproportionate, and they are certainly not carried out with military necessity, given that we are seeing the now almost complete destruction of the territory of Gaza and the killing of so many civilians on the ground.
What action do you want the Australian government and the international community to take in light of your conclusions?
The Australian government and the international community more broadly, but really thinking about Australia, we would like to see more sanctions brought against Israeli figures in the leadership, but also any Israeli entities, any companies that are engaged in supplying to this. There has been a report issued by a former UN Special Rapporteur about the connection of companies, of business, with what is going on in the ground in Gaza. So those should also be sanctioned. And I would also like to see our government speak out actively in support of the International Criminal Court and its arrest warrants. Australia is a party to the International Criminal Court, so it should be supporting the work of the court by actively speaking out and saying that it will arrest anyone under an arrest warrant, and also condemning the sanctions that the United States has brought against officials of the International Criminal Court and anyone connected with it. By publicly announcing its support, the Australian government would demonstrate that it holds accountability for international crimes as an important thing to the Australian government and the Australian people.
Melanie O'Brien, good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.